Guess I should turn my mic on. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show today. We're having a great time hanging out here, talking about all the things that are happening in the news and actually learning a little bit today from Niall Gardner and Stephen Kent. Niall Gardner, the head of the Margaret Thatcher Center over at the Heritage Foundation. I am a dumb guy when it comes to UK politics. I have no idea how things work over there. And who better than the expert and one of my colleagues, the expert, the in all caps expert, Niall Gardner, to talk about it with me from the Heritage Foundation. Very excited to bring him on and have that conversation in a couple of minutes. But before then, there was a Supreme Court decision today where people learned exactly what the term temporary means. I'm going to go to a liberal news source for this one. And we're going to go to ABC News. You know, ABC News, that includes news organizations and shows like The View, where they have totally non-biased coven of women discussing the news. All right, here we go. Supreme Court allows cancellation of TPS for Haitian Syrians as attorneys warn of impact on thousands. Well, you know what? The ruling is expected to have a sweeping impact on 1.3 million people. According to ABC News, the Supreme Court ruled Thursday that the Trump administration can cancel the temporary protected status, TPS, for thousands of Haitians and Syrians, concluding that the Department of Homeland Security has broad discretion with little to no judicial oversight to decide when they must return home. Yeah, that's why they're Homeland Security. The ruling is likely to have a sweeping impact on approximately 1.3 million people who rely on TPS to live and work in the United States legally. Why haven't they gotten their actual citizenship yet? I'm going to get to some numbers here in a second, and you're going to be shocked about it. And advocates say they fear it will have devastating and possibly deadly long-term costs for those refugees. All right. Let's just get into... Oh, I need to email. I'm going to have to email Niall in a second here while I'm live on air. To get him into the show. Give me 1 second here while I do that. This is how nice I am, by the way, and we don't have a producer. It's just me, so I have to do it in the middle of talking. Okay. So I want to talk about this and these Haitian refugees here momentarily. This is what I learned today. And this is straight from Google. So again, another liberal news source. I don't want you to say, that I used only conservative media. I don't want people to be able to criticize me and say, oh, you only use conservative media or whatever. No. I went to the straight liberal news sources. I went to ABC News, and now here we are at, this is straight from Google. Did you guys know, here's a fun fact. Did you guys know that Haitians were initially granted temporary protected status on January 15th, 2010, following a 7.0 magnitude earthquake? The temporary protected status for Haitians began 16 and a half years ago. It has been extended 6 times since then. Can you explain to me, and again in the chat, maybe you guys can let me know, what is temporary about 16 years? Hello, everyone. What is temporary about a 16-year stay? That is a generation and a half? More? What counts as a generation? Let's learn a little bit together, shall we? What counts as a generation? Average period between the birth of parents and birth of their offspring, which is currently 25 to 30 years. It was a little bit smaller a couple of years ago. So we're in between 2 generations of people, basically. 16 years is not temporary. 16 years is permanent. That's like having your brother or somebody that you've been taking care of. He lost his job. He can stay with us for a couple of weeks, and he's there for 16 years. Enough is enough. Why are we paying for these people? Why isn't there, again, when we take a look at asylum seekers, and there are many, many other decisions here. I'm not going to get into those because we have a short period to talk about a few bits of news here before we get into our guests for the day. But I lost my train of thought. But I am really just, again, this is what happens when you ask me to email a link and when I start a show. This, to me, again, why, when you're seeking asylums, there we go, when you're an asylum seeker, why are we coming to the United States? Why do you have to come to the United States? If you are actually legitimately seeking asylum, and granted, Haiti's closer than most countries, But you have all these people walking all the way through Mexico. Mexico isn't that bad of a country. Now, you might think it's that bad of a country if you're an American. But if you're seeking asylum, if your country is so bad, because again, what the definition, you have to be coming from a country that is like war-torn or environmentally so broken that you can't consider, that there are no livable conditions there, that the government oppresses you. And you're walking over an entire country of Mexico. You're flying across the ocean. There are a lot of people that, I remember people coming through that were seeking asylum from Africa. There aren't safe countries in Africa to immigrate to seek asylum in. There aren't safe countries in the Middle East. There aren't safe countries, well, there's plenty in Europe. They're wide open in Europe. But if you're crossing the ocean, it ain't that bad. If you're walking over Mexico, it ain't that bad. You don't have it that bad. That's an issue here. And that's what we're taking a look at. I mean, this is the left, again, the left who is so worried about this and screaming about these asylum seekers. What happened? What happened? Do you remember when 72 illegals were sent to Martha's Vineyard by Ron DeSantis and probably the greatest political stunt ever? They were removed from Martha's Vineyard within 48 hours. They used the army, they used the military to come in and remove these immigrants in 48 hours. Now all of these people are screaming about ending the temporary protected status of an entire country of people who we have allowed to just come here and take American jobs, by the way. And at one point, there were jobs programs under the Obama administration that allowed and funded companies to basically, it promoted these companies to hire these temporary protected status people for a lot less than Americans. So they would fire the American workers from these. I think one of them was like what was the turkey plant that did it? There was a lot of like meat packing plants that did this. They would fire an entire town's worth of people basically and cut off all the Americans so that they could hire the temporary protected status Haitians and get funded by the government to do it. So it is a problem. Look, Haiti's obviously a terrible country. They don't have it great there, but at some point enough is enough. I don't even know how much money we've sent there. Ask the Clintons. I don't even know how much money we've sent there to try to fix things. I don't know what we can do, but like at some point, temporary protected status over 16 years, you go, okay, enough. That's enough. There are a few other rulings that came down today, but I want to get into some happy news in the middle of all of this. Well, actually, before we get to the happy news, let's talk about this. It appears as if the AP has had to recognize that something actually was done to damage the reflecting pool. In a court filing, the National Park Service official said that the liner along the bottom of the reflecting pool was cut with a sharp knife or razor. Here we go. I'm going to go to the AP story. Again, the AP, not a favorable place for the truth. They're hit or miss. You can see these chunks of the pool. I don't care about this guy. We're advertising here. A liner along the bottom of the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool was cut with a sharp razor this month, causing damage to the foam sealant installed as part of a $16 million rehabilitation project, a top official at the National Park Service says. The agency reported in the June 9th incident to Park Police, said Frank Lands, Deputy Director of Operations for the Park Service. Lands made the statement in a court document filed late Wednesday as part of a lawsuit filed by a nonprofit organization to halt the Trump administration's work on the project. Why does the left want them to stop working on this project? It doesn't make any sense. His statement does not say whether or not the damage was a suspected case of vandalism or identify anyone who might have been involved. I will tell you this about the reflecting pool. If you've ever walked there at night, if you've ever walked by there at night, the reflecting pool is completely pitch black. I don't know what the camera system is like there, but I can tell you right now, unless they have infrared at night, you can basically do anything next to the reflecting pool. It is I don't even know how long it is. What is it? About a half mile long? What's the length? Feels like it's 2,000 feet long and 167 feet across is the reflecting pool. So when you have 2,000 feet of very dark area, I mean, you get light, again, like if I can, I'm not going to pull up a thing, but if you can see my cursor here, you get light when you get closer to the Lincoln Memorial. You get some light when you're back by the World War II fountains and memorial. But when you get into the middle there at the reflecting pool, it's very, very dark. A lot of things can happen at night when it is that dark. And it is, I mean, you're not full of National Guard there at night. They like to trust people in D.C., as most people would do. I've walked the National Mall at 2 a.m. before, which is a great time to do it, by the way. Nobody's out. It's beautiful at night. I've walked it before then. And during that time, I saw maybe 6 park police from the Capitol all the way to the Lincoln Memorial. And there's like no one. Literally, it's pitch black, and there was no one around that reflecting pool when you walked by it. So it is very easy to damage at night. Again, if there is if something happened, there's an actual court document now where somebody is on the record with penalty of perjury on the line saying that there was definitely something that happened there. I don't doubt it. Trump hired his pool guys, basically, to go fix the reflecting pool, and I trust them. So for the algae to come back that quickly, for the liner to be torn, and you're seeing leftists show up and cut it and damage it for no reason. I don't understand why. You're seeing leftists show up in costumes, cheering for the algae, which I'm not sure where you are in your life when you're showing up and cheering for algae. But it's a very, very unique position to be in. I don't understand why they hate America so much. I've never hated anything. And I've been a Mets fan for a while. I've watched them lose in the last game of the season that kept them out of the playoffs multiple times, including the last game at Shea Stadium. You would think I would hate something from that. You would think I would hate the people who wish harm on me for my political beliefs and what I stand up for. I don't. I've never hated something as much as the left really hates the beautification of Washington, D.C., and the cheering for the algae to me is mind-blowing. It just doesn't make any sense. But you are seeing people cut and take pieces of the pool liner out of it. We've seen it a few times. So it doesn't strike me as odd that someone would have done something terrible at night. And apparently there was a very, very large cut that happened down the middle. I guess we'll learn more about it as things go on, but I got to give the Trump administration credit. There are monuments that are cleaner. There are fountains that are running in Washington, D.C. that I've never seen run before. And to be honest with you, one of the things that's going under the radar is it looks like they're fixing the George Washington Parkway. And I got to tell you, when I saw Fresh Road going from Reagan Airport into Alexandria, I've never seen that before in my life. A lack of potholes there is unbelievable. I have literally never, ever, ever seen anything like that in my life there. I've never seen them even attempt to fix the road. I've seen them put cones out, but I've never seen them actually try to fix the road. Before we get to our guest, I do want to talk about one more quick story. Where is the... It's this. And we'll do something positive here. The 250th anniversary of America has kicked off. The celebrations have begun. Doug Burgum was there. Donald Trump was there. All of our military bands were there. What a cool outfit that guy's got. Almost makes you want to be in a band. But they played every patriotic song, including Toby Keith's "Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue," where they took out the "boot in your ass" part. That's my only complaint. Leave it in. It's American. But other than that, I know they want to be wholesome for families, and that's fine. But what an incredible event, a kickoff to America 250. There are going to be events all over the country, and I encourage you guys to go to one of many of them. If you're near Mount Rushmore, man, I am still debating getting credentials to go to Mount Rushmore. I would go to Mount Rushmore if I were you. There are going to be crazy flyovers there. I mean, Donald Trump, I just can't imagine Kamala Harris or the left being in charge of this country doing America 250. It would probably be a week and a half full of apologizing to Native Americans and land acknowledgments before they even got to anything. And it would be some sort of trans thing or some DEI nonsense. We would be celebrating the history of diversity, not the history of America. But we got the right guy in there. The guy that hugs the American flag is the guy who should be leading the charge celebrating America's 250th anniversary. And I got to tell you, like I said, if you can get to one of these, if you can get to Washington, D.C., what a place that's going to be. If you can get to Mount Rushmore, I think that's going to be the highlight. I know they're going to go crazy in Washington, D.C. and have a lot of cool stuff, but I really think the Mount Rushmore celebration is going to be where it's at. But America 250 is officially kicked off the parties, and I think that was Brooke Rollins there. And again, incredible scene in Washington, D.C. Lots of patriots showing up. Very, very exciting. Now, I want to talk to somebody that I'm bringing in here, a colleague of mine at the Heritage Foundation. I'll pull up his profile here. Let me get my face shrunk down so we can talk about him. There we go. Niall Gardner is the director of the Margaret Thatcher Center for Freedom and Bernard and Barbara Lomas Fellow. I have to tell you, I don't understand British politics at all. I don't. A lot of people pretend to. A lot of people in the influencer class and people like me that are on TV and radio, they pretend to understand it. I am one of those people who says I don't get it at all. I need to call on an expert to talk about it, and I think who better right now to bring in? And I have to make us big. Give it 1 second so I can make our photos big here. Niall Gardner from the Heritage Foundation. How you doing, Niall?
Great to see you, Tim. Many thanks for having me on the show today. Just got back from London a couple of days ago.
Oh, no bragging. What's it like there, by the way? Because we see before we get into like the depth of politics, and I'm going to ask a lot of dumb guy questions. It's really an honor for me to be the media fellow at the Heritage Foundation because I get to work with folks like you, where if I don't understand something, I can literally go to like the top expert, right, and conservatism and really in the world to ask about questions, ask my dumb guy questions to. But what is it like in the UK right now? Because we keep seeing a lot of these videos of like Islamization and people in the streets, and it seems negative all the way around. What is your interpretation, and what did you see?
Well, it's great. It's great to be able to talk to you today, Tim. I think the reality in the UK it's pretty grim, and there's no sugarcoating the decline that we're seeing in Britain. Especially the decline we've seen in the last, couple of decades or so. And as you point out, I think mass migration has transformed the country. The Islamification of Britain is very, very evident. There are parts of London, Birmingham, Manchester, Bradford, etc., big cities in the UK that have completely changed beyond recognition. In fact, just a few days ago, I was in a taxi going through a part of West London that looked straight out of the Middle East, frankly. And this is the reality not only in the UK but across much of Western Europe as well. And you can see the same thing in Paris, Berlin, Brussels, Vienna, Amsterdam, The Hague. So across Europe, it's a similar picture. And so mass migration, both illegal and legal, has fundamentally changed the dynamics in Western European countries, and I would say that Western civilization itself is under real threat. But there is a fight back in the UK, and that fight back in large part has been led by Nigel Farage, the leader of the Reform Party, who probably will be the next Prime Minister. And I think there's hope for Britain, but they've got to control the borders, secure the borders, deport 1 million to 2 million illegal migrants, and stop the flow of migrants as well, coming into the country. And Britain right now is under socialist rule. Keir Starmer is the Prime Minister. He's about to exit later this summer. He's been a complete disaster. Mm-hmm. But the Labour government's still going to be in power for another, potentially 2 or 3 years. The next election doesn't have to be held until 2029. And so we've got to put up with, the loony left running the country for quite a while longer. But they will be out eventually. So there is hope, Tim, I think. But the situation right now, it's grim. There's no doubt about it. It's a very serious state of decline that you're seeing in Britain and, frankly, in most of Europe as well.
So I'll tell you about my personal experience. The last time I went over there was about 3 years now, and I did a comedy show at, I forget where the club was. I was there for like literally 2 days. I did a show. I left the country. But when I showed up, number one, I stayed in part of town where it looked like, I called it Little Pakistan jokingly, because they had a restaurant called Iran there. And I'm like, who would have a restaurant called Iran? Like, that doesn't make any sense for anywhere in the West to have. But I started the joke I started with a joke at my set. That got a humongous pop from the crowd. And I said, I've never performed in an Islamic country before, so let me know if I violate the Sharia. When I came off stage, the comedians I was performing with were concerned that I violated the law, the hate speech laws there, by saying that. They were like, we can't believe you said that. And I fear, and my question to you is, I have a lot, by the way, and I know we have limited time here, but if I were to go over there now, and I've criticized the government, I've criticized the mass migration, would I be stopped in the airport coming in and given a talking to?
Yeah, I think that, that's always a threat, right? Because that's happened actually to to some US nationals in the past, including a prominent comedian who has both Irish and American citizenship, and he was arrested at Heathrow. And so you will find, large numbers of lefties out there who will call for the arrest of various individuals coming into the UK. So there's always that threat out there. I think over 10,000 British citizens have been arrested for their views on social media, their tweets and so on under the Keir Starmer government. So this is the reality. It's not just some sort of isolated instance. This is a government that actively suppresses freedom of speech, and people have gone to prison for their views on X in the UK. In fact, I think the socialist government of the UK arrests more people for free speech issues than any other government in Europe. Actually, that's the reality. I think Elon Musk has pointed this out on many occasions, and it's absolutely shocking and frightening to see this in the UK, of course, which is the original home of freedom of speech, really. When we think of the kinds of liberties and freedoms that we enjoy in the West, a lot of that is derived, of course, from Magna Carta, from British history, and from the key role that the British people have played in the past in advancing the rule of law and freedom of speech. And now it's under real threat because we have this woke, left-wing, insane government right now, headed by by Keir Starmer, and he'll soon be replaced by another woke left-wing socialist, most likely Andy Burnham, who is the former mayor of Greater Manchester. And you can see the decline that's happened in Manchester, frankly, in recent years under Andy Burnham, the socialists. So I fear for the future of Britain, but at the same time, I'm hopeful that things can be turned around. But there's a very narrow window, Tim, within which that can be done. And the same applies to France and Germany and other European countries. Time is running out. And unless you're going to see the socialists and their cronies and so on thrown out of power, we're not going to see any change. And it's the same situation in France with Emmanuel Macron, who's doing his best to ruin the country. Fortunately, you have Jordan Bardella, who could well be the next president, who's very good. And so you could have Nigel Farage in the UK, Bardella in France, and Donald Trump here in the United States, all at the same time leading key nations. So there is hope, but the reality right now, it's very grim, Tim, and that's evident to anyone who crosses the Atlantic over to the UK, and you've seen this firsthand yourself, on the ground in London.
Well, it's very interesting to me, and I want to get your take on this. I have a lot of dumb questions about the shifting of prime ministers and how that works. But to me, there was an instance, and people might think this is crazy, but when I saw it, I threw a flag. When Sadiq Khan first got into office there as mayor of London, they immediately outlawed, by manipulating the left, images of women, like advertisements of bikinis and underwear in downtown London. And they said it was because, body shaming, you want to be body positive and yada, yada, kind of using the lefty trope and the feminist trope thing on that. But I immediately flagged it and I go, oh, this is Islamification. They don't want to have any kind of women that are uncovered to that extent in public because that would be, too much for their culture that they're trying to move. Do you think that a lot of this, a lot of the takeover with these socialists and whatnot and the sympathy towards Islam and the Sharia comes from a manipulation of leftists?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and these are very good questions that you're asking. Really, that a large number of Americans really care about what's happening in the UK and across Europe, actually. And so these are very important questions that you're raising, because what happens in Britain and Europe also impacts the United States, and it's also a vision of America's future, unless it's fought and defeated across the Atlantic. This is the reality. Where the UK, Europe right now, it's just, perhaps maybe 10, 20 years ahead of where the United States is in terms of how the left and their Islamist allies want to shape the agenda. because the Islamists, and that includes figures like Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, who in my view is an extreme left-wing figure. He's very similar, of course, to Mandani in New York.
Oh yeah.
Similar ideology. He appeases the Islamist elements at every opportunity, you have the Islamic figures in the UK who are closely aligned with the far left, and they actually work together to advance their common sort of socialist big government agenda, actually, and they're allies. And this is happening all over Europe, not just in Britain. And you're also seeing that with the rise of the Green Party in the UK, who get over 10% of the vote now. And that's an alliance of Islamists and woke, crazy, lunatic lefties. And they work together to destroy Britain, really. This is their agenda. And of course, they want to do that in the United States as well. And you're seeing that in New York and other parts of the country, Minneapolis, for example. And so Britain is a vision of America's future. So we have to look very carefully at what is happening in the UK to see the threats down the line here in the United States, actually, already on the horizon in New York and elsewhere. But in the UK, you have Islamic extremists working hand in hand with the woke left, because it's all about power and control at the end of the day. And so the Islamists will fight to wield real power in Britain, and of course the woke left are the useful idiots for them. Mm-hmm. So this is the way it works, really.
And when people see that Keir Starmer stepped down, like you said, it's just somebody else from his same party, right? I mean, is he going to be this mayor of Manchester? Is he going to be worse than Keir Starmer, or is he going to pretend for a little bit and then slip in?
I think he could be worse. And it's important to bear in mind, the Labour Party right now has about 15 to 20% support in Britain. And Keir Starmer has been the most unpopular prime minister in British history. But once you replace socialists like Keir Starmer with another socialist like Andy Burnham, there's no real change. And I would say that Burnham is potentially more dangerous because he's a somewhat more charismatic and efficient figure than Starmer. He's also, his views on some issues are even more extreme than Starmer. So, for example, Andy Burnham has supported the UK rejoining the European Union. And he has openly backed the Rejoin the EU campaign, which is an absolutely insane campaign within Britain. But even Keir Starmer hasn't gone that far. So Burnham's actually worse than Starmer in some respects. And also Burnham's very big on suppression of free speech and all the Orwellian stuff. So I would say he's an even bigger threat than clueless Keir Starmer.
It's one of those instances where you get a new leader in because you got rid of the guy you don't like, and I think people think, oh, this is going to be refreshing, this will be new, this will be different, and it's going to be much.
Yeah, it's going to be more of the same. Yeah. Actually.
What's it like, by the way, for folks who don't know, when I look at personally, when I look at the greatest leaders of my lifetime, world leaders, obviously Ronald Reagan. I love Trump. I like what he's doing, just being mouthy. So I don't agree with all of his policies, but boy, is he fun to watch. But Margaret Thatcher always comes up.
Yes.
And when I also speak to people around the building at Heritage, and I ask who their favorite fellow is, it's always you. I say that across the board. It's always you.
Very kind.
Can you just talk about she really was one of the most brilliant minds, an incredible prime minister, probably, again, not just great leader, but probably the best prime minister. I mean, the best. What am I saying? Probably. That's a wrong word there. The best prime minister of my lifetime for the UK, and someone who, as an American, I could look up to. What was that like? What was she like when, in like private moments, like when you're working on heavy policy, when you're working on you helped her with her book? What was she like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I worked for her for close to 3 years. This was after she was prime minister, but she was still a very big, prominent figure in British public life. And I worked with her on a book called Statecraft, which actually became the genesis of Brexit. It was published in 2002. So I spent 2 years working with Lady Thatcher on the book. And you could not ask for a better boss than Margaret Thatcher. I mean, a truly courageous, highly principled figure, fearless, actually. but also at the same time very kind to her staff. And I was actually the last person she hired for her political staff.
Wow.
And the youngest member of her team at the time. And she was incredibly kind and very motherly, I have to say. I miss her dearly. And working for her was an incredible experience. And she was truly one of the greatest figures of the modern era, without any doubt. And alongside Winston Churchill, I think the greatest British Prime Minister of the modern era. And she was somebody who lived every day of her life for her country. She loved her country. She also loved the United States, which is why we have the Margaret Thatcher Center for Freedom here at the Heritage Foundation, because she loved America. She loved the American people. She greatly valued the special relationship. I think she would have got on very well with Donald Trump, actually. And I think they would have seen eye to eye on many issues. They might have had some disagreements here and there, but at the end of the day, these are two immense figures of our time, and I think they would have actually worked very well together. And she greatly admired the spirit of freedom that exists in the United States, and America is the champion of the free world. It's the last hope that we have for the free world, frankly, if Europe falls. And she loved everything about America, and she greatly admired the tremendous spirit of the American people. So she was a fantastic boss, and she was also the patron of the Heritage Foundation for several years up until her passing in 2013. And so she loved Heritage. Heritage was her home away from home in the United States. She spent a lot of time at Heritage, so she enjoyed meeting with everyone at Heritage, including with the interns as well. So this was a very special place for her.
It's an incredible experience. I've gotten to work with some larger leaders early in my career, and I can only imagine, the knowledge I got from them. I can only imagine what it was like working with her.
Yes, incredible experience, really.
Yeah, and actually, is it her writing desk that is up in one of our conferences?
Yes, correct. Yeah, so in the Kriebel boardroom, there is a writing desk that belonged to Margaret Thatcher, and so it was one of her original desks that she used, and it's a very precious desk, I have to say, and and that's right there on the 8th floor at Heritage. And a lot of British politicians and European politicians and American politicians like to pay homage to Margaret Thatcher by visiting the Margaret Thatcher statue and desk at Heritage. So it's a special place for conservatives to visit and remember the great Iron Lady.
It really is. And by the way, if you want to hear from her, I hear Joe Biden still talks to her on the phone regularly.
Joe Biden. I have to say the antithesis of Margaret Thatcher. Let's face it, with Joe Biden. I mean, you couldn't find a more different politician. And Margaret Thatcher was dedicated to saving the West. Joe Biden was all about destroying America and U.S. leadership. So completely different politicians.
It's interesting, just from your perspective, how does Britain go from someone like her to now whoever takes the place of Keir Starmer? What has shifted over there? Is it the migration? Is it just the socialism? Is it the same thing that we're seeing here, where lots of kids want free handouts and they don't want to work, and that turns into policy?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all of these factors. I mean, certainly mass migration has been a big factor change in the UK, but also the relentless decline of Britain under socialism, but also you had 14 years of conservative rule prior to Keir Starmer, but you had many conservatives who frankly didn't really believe in conservative principles, and so part of the decline of the UK is as a result of conservatives who did not stand up for conservative values and principles. And that's what happens. So, but it's many factors that led to British decline. Can it be reversed? Yeah, I think so. But it's an incredible fight and battle to do so. But America's always an inspiration. And you look at what President Trump has done in the United States, even in Washington D.C., and turning things around with reducing crime, beautifying the city, and Americans can feel proud of their capital city once again. After Biden's efforts to destroy it.
You've lived in town or been around DC for a long period of time.
Yes.
When's the last time you smelled chlorine walking by a fountain, especially the one at Union Station? I walked by that and
Yeah.
I go, it smells clean. This is
Yeah,
amazing.
exactly. DC looks really beautiful and clean right now, and if you compare it with most cities in Europe, I mean, it's night and day, frankly. And yeah, um, President Trump cares about the capital city of the United States. The left, they don't. They want to tear everything down. They want to destroy everything. And DC is now, in my view, and I've been here for nearly a quarter of a century. It's now one of the most beautiful cities in the world, literally, because it's been monumentally cleaned up. And you have a president who actually cares about America, and that's a great thing, really, isn't it? To have a president who really cares about the future of this great nation, because this is the greatest nation on earth, and without America, the world would be an incredibly dark and dangerous place.
Yeah. You ever drive on that GW Parkway? Because they're fixing
it. Yes. Occasionally.
It was smooth pavement the last time I was on it. And I was like, oh, I forget all the other stuff. You know, that GW Parkway, and you're not, breaking your neck, getting whiplash by hitting a pothole.
Yeah.
Amazing time.
That's miraculous.
Now, Gardner, again, thank you for being here, director of the Margaret Thatcher Center for Freedom.
My pleasure.
And Bernard and Barbara Lomas Fellow. And I can't believe I get to call people like you a colleague at the Heritage Foundation. And on the flip side, I'm sure when Niall's out at like a happy hour dinner, he goes, I can't believe that Tim Young is in this building.
Yeah, actually, it's a great privilege to be on the show, Tim, really. And I followed you on X for many years, and you've got a great show, so it's a real privilege to be here today. So thank you, Tim.
Get out of here. I got drinks next time or coffee next time I'm in town. I got you. Thanks for being here, sir.
Thanks very much, Tim.
See you soon. I want to talk about a couple other news stories. Again, now Gardner, I want to pull up his bio for you real quick. This guy, I mean, again, not to be like this guy, but this guy. When I talk to people around the building at Heritage, he is so highly respected, and just one of the great minds in conservatism, and a great advisor, and has a great deal of knowledge from the UK. Advises everyone. And just, again, one of the most brilliant minds in international politics. Now, Gardner. Speaking of international politics, something very interesting came up this week while we're waiting. Stephen Kent apparently is having technical difficulties. Something very interesting came up this week. Do I have him? I might have him. Okay, well, we'll give him in a second. I have been following a lot of this internet drama about who's getting paid from a foreign country. Now, I can... And which of your favorite conservatives are getting paid from by a foreign country? I can tell you right now. Let's zoom in here on my face. Let's get this out of here. I've never taken money from a foreign country. In fact, if Japan wants to pay me, I've been on this campaign for a while. If Japan would like to pay me to come over and talk about and go to Japanese wrestling and talk about the Pokemon theme park and get a couple of packs of Pokemon cards, and by a couple I mean like a case, I will go over and I will be the propagandist for Japan. But also, I'll tell people that Japan is paying for that trip. I have over the past 2 years, seen so many influencers get flown around the world, get given free gifts, get paid by countries that suddenly magically they're in love with what a wonderful place Doha must be this time of year. Better get a house there. That this story does not shock me. This is from the Telegraph in the UK. Qatar paid for fans to support the team at the World Cup. So in case you see some sweet photos of your favorite conservatives hanging out in a box, eating all the free hot dogs, so I don't know, pork, maybe not, beef hot dogs if they've got beef hot, and drinking it up at a World Cup game, cheering for Qatar, it wouldn't shock me. I just think their money is everywhere. They're one of the biggest state sponsors, if not the biggest state sponsor of our colleges and universities. They've got their hand in, I believe, the NHL and NASCAR and a bunch of other things. But it does not shock me that they paid for fans to support their team at the World Cup. You got to show some support, and if they don't like it, you got to pay for it. So I've seen so many stories and so much infighting over the past week on social media between so many organizations and people and groups and whatever. Everybody apparently is getting paid by Qatar. except for me, except for our next guest. Here's Stephen. Stephen, you're not getting money from a foreign government, are you?
No, I am not. But this is actually an interesting topic in my background. I have done work for Al Jazeera in the past. So you didn't put me on the spot to say that, but yeah, back in 2020, 2021, Qatar and Al Jazeera wanted to do a show in Washington, D.C. about the rising sort of MAGA movement that was maturing in Washington, D.C. and the old school think tank class, like the libertarian free marketeers. And I actually did host a show for Al Jazeera back in that time period.
An Al Jazeera show?
I did. Yeah, you didn't know this?
No, I did not, actually.
No, so there are a couple, I have mixed feelings about it in a couple of different ways, but the way in which I don't is that it was about domestic politics and an interview show where I would interview people from Heritage and people from the MAGA movement.
I'm going to stop here. Because the difference is people knew you were employed and getting the money, and you were on the network. There's a difference for someone who is actually working at a channel and someone who is magically in love with the country and getting back channeled lots of money.
It's really pernicious. Yeah, and like you said, it's everywhere. And I think back in 2020, I was a little bit naive to sort of the role that Qatari money played in the world. It has taken me a couple of years to really understand exactly what their media strategy is. And now they've just outright bought influencers on the right. Whereas this show they canceled within a year because nobody really wanted to watch think tank people discuss the rise of the MAGA movement. It was pretty boring, and we didn't cover anything related to the Middle East. It was just inside DC politics, and it was pretty boring. And so it got canceled. They just pretty much decided we're not going to launch shows. We're just going to buy influencers by cutting them a check. And it's working a lot better.
I love it when I see like a gay conservative. I'm not going to name names. I just like it when I see a gay conservative go over and talk about how wonderful the country is. And like, I wouldn't go above the third floor of a building if I were gay anything in Qatar.
No crop tops for the gay conservatives. Make sure that they've got their jeans all the way down to the ground.
Yeah, there's just a lot. Like again, and when you have a prominent host now saying that he's going to buy property in Doha, I'm like, nobody's buying property in Doha. What's happening here?
Absolutely ridiculous. Just sort of brain dead slop. I've been to the UAE and spent time in Dubai, and I think a lot of people will go over there and visit that part of that region and go like, wow, this is really interesting. It's clean, it's orderly. There's a lot of high-rise apartments, and there's a lot of places to live, but it's also kind of just devoid of any real culture. It's just sky rises and restaurants for Westerners. Why on earth would you want to live there? There's really nothing to it.
I don't understand the flex with it. Again, though, they've spent a lot of money. They've spent a lot of money on like travel influencers and stuff, and that's announced when they're giving money to travel influencers to fly over there on crazy first class flights and then see the crazy like luxury. But again, like you're right, there just isn't that culture there. It's like at least New York, you can go to fancy places and there's stuff around to show and do and have something that's different. But it's just money and spending over there. Speaking of money and spending, how about that seamless segue? Wow.
That was really well done, Tim.
Right? You wrote an article in the Daily Wire, the Trump affordability policy that's hurting more than it helps. Tariffs, we're finding out, aren't, by the way, you can see what I purchased on the internet. It's Pokemon cards. Tariffs have backfired a bit, haven't they? I mean, it seems like things were good for a little bit, and certain things tariffs are good on, certain things they aren't. But when it comes to affordability and when it comes to housing, when it comes to everyday appliances and things, not going so well, is it?
No, the tariffs regime that we have really been putting in place since at least Liberation Day, but has really been part of, I don't know, I guess politics since at least 2016, the idea that we need to correct trade imbalances in all cases has really not served American consumers in any positive way. There's one element of the tariff plan, which is we want to have American manufacturing brought home. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's one goal that is often stated, like rebuilding the Midwest industrial sector. But then there's a second stated goal, and you hear this all the time from the administration and certain Republicans, but we want to raise tariff revenue. We're going to make Americans rich with tariff revenue. And they even talked about cutting checks to everyday Americans based on those revenues. But here's the thing, those two goals can't both happen at the same time. If you reshore every American job, there's no tariff revenue. And if you maintain tariffs, American factory jobs actually are lost. You lose 80 jobs for every one that you reshore. And that's just sort of a statistic that takes the impact of the cost of inputs. So if you put a major tariff on steel inputs or aluminum or copper, it raises the cost of doing business for, retail stores, for home construction jobs, for building projects, and they just lay people off. And so you can bring one guy back, but you're going to lose 80.
Well, how do you thread this needle? How like what do we do here? Because this to me is, again, like I'm not a trade guy. I've just kind of been intrigued by this issue. Like how do you thread the needle of, because it should be brought home. I think that we should be able to produce everything on our own. I think most people say that. Of course, like made in America, yada yada. I watched steel plants in Baltimore. I grew up in Baltimore, and there was a big steel plant that basically went out of business, and it tanked the entire city and the entire commerce there. This is true in many places along the coast and in America. How do we fix it?
Yeah, I just went on a road trip with my daughter up through Pennsylvania, through Ohio, and then into northern Michigan, into some rural territory or rural areas there. And she was asking me about, all the MAGA stuff and all the portraits of Trump on people's barns. And she was like, what is with this level of support and love of this guy in this part of the country? I said, because he's really the first politician who's ever come on the scene and said out loud that these people lost something in the 1990s into the 2000s from certain elements of global trade. They used to have thriving communities based around factories. And we were spending some time in a Pennsylvania town, just having coffee and some food. And that town is this massive plastics manufacturing plant. It looks like a city, the entire factory. And that downtown, thriving. It's a lovely place to be, but you probably wouldn't want to be there if that factory went away. So that's real. But what is also real is that we need to pursue some kind of North American focused trade bloc. We have the USMCA, US, Canada, Mexico. I think we need to get more real about who our real geographic friends are and who we can actually benefit from the most through trade. The Trump administration has been correct in this thing called the Don Roe doctrine, the idea that they're going to focus on our sphere of influence in this hemisphere. That's why they took out, Maduro in Venezuela, to focus more on this part of the world. You could also really do that just by saying, actually, we really value our automobile and steel and ag relationships with Canada and Mexico. We're going to get rich on this side of the country and exert our influence, or this side of the world and exert our influence. And we are going to penalize, places that are adversarial to us, places like China. I think that that's what we should be doing. That's one action item, but I don't want to belabor the point.
No, this should have, I believe this should have bipartisan support, but who knows? I mean, I'm taking a look at, I had to dig this up as I was typing while I was talking to you, or listening to you talk, was John Fetterman, who was mayor of Braddock, Pennsylvania, which was a steel town that totally lost its industry. And if you look at it, it just looks completely depleted. And there's so many towns like that obviously you were teaching your daughter about when you guys were traveling. Your daughter's brilliant, by the way. One time I brought this up.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I had her just on the show as a little kid and not you. When I was over the Washington Examiner.
It's true. No. This is deep lore.
But no, I back when I was at the Examiner, and they didn't necessarily have any social media followers, and so nobody saw the show. But another conversation for another time. But no, look, this really is, it's difficult, and like right now for me, and I take a look at the prices that have gone up on everything because of the tariffs and what things cost, and like I bet my house would have been a little bit cheaper if the steel and aluminum and other tariffs were lower.
Probably about $10,900 cheaper, all in all. That's
There we
the
go.
big number.
That would have been nice,
Yeah.
but it's just a very, very difficult position. You're right. Like Trump, I
Mhm.
think the great thing about Trump is that he knows what is hurting people and where this country is and who needs to be helped. The solutions just aren't always 100% on what we're going with, and I think it's a lot of trial and error, and things need to be twisted a little bit here to get it back to a decent spot for most working Americans.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know.
I love this president. I think he's willing to articulate and point out where things have gone wrong for the American way of life. And I think there's an instinct to try and sort of get even or penalize certain countries who aren't always nice to us. Like now we're talking about doing 100% tariff on French wine because we're not getting along with Emmanuel Macron. And we get into this tit for tat with the UK over their free speech restrictions on their native population and on American tourists, by the way, and sort of using tariffs as leverage to achieve foreign policy extractions. But I think we just need to really focus on making North America as rich as possible. And by the way, if you make North America, and including Mexico, as rich as possible, you'll have less people trying to flee that part of the world and come here illegally. So that's just neither here nor there. But you could also compromise by dropping tariffs on components or tariffs on products. So you don't want to have a tariff on vehicles, right? So vehicles that are composed of 50% foreign made steel. You want to have tariffs on individual components, just like the parts, like the bolts, the rotors, the wheels, that kind of stuff. And then that allows manufacturers of automobiles to know how much the tariffs are ultimately going to cost them, and they can adjust their business. But that's just something that we could do to compromise.
I think that makes sense. I agree with you. That's why I had you on to talk about it. I think it's pretty smart. Before we get out of here, I want to talk about something much, much lighter. And you brought this up because you are a great dad. I remember this from back in the day. And you are very patriotic, and I know that you've taught your daughter a lot about this country, and your family loves the country. What are you doing for the 4th of July? You guys going to any big things? You got any big plans?
Oh yeah, we have a amazing 4th of July festival in Manassas, Virginia. That's about 45 minutes outside of Washington, D.C. They shut down the entire downtown. Of course, they do the fireworks and all that stuff. And we always do that. It's my daughter's favorite holiday. I've actually never known somebody for whom July 4th is their favorite holiday, but it is the case. Oh, well, right there he is right there. You and Sylvie should go get some corn dogs and watch the fireworks.
I can't. It's kind of hard over here because the office is very crowded.
Yeah.
But you can see my America 250 Nutcracker down there. I'm ready to
There
go.
you go.
It was too
right outside this building I'm in is a America 250 pop-up store where they've just got all the merch you could imagine. So we'll be in Manassas doing the block party, playing games, and just eating way, way, way too much food. I don't think I'm going to go into DC though for the big hoopla. Just too much traffic for me.
I debated it, and I've decided to not be in DC for the 4th of July just because of the same thing. It's weird. Like I want to be there because I think it's the place to be, but on the same hand, anybody who's from the area knows how bad it gets in downtown DC. Last year, I was privileged enough that they had a little rooftop party at the Heritage Foundation, and I was at the top of the Heritage Building to watch the fireworks. I will not top that. There is nothing to top that. Also, by the way, if you're going to see the fireworks in DC, and I'm sure you've experienced this at some point in your life, if it's just a little bit humid, those first couple of fireworks turn into smoke, and the smoke never goes anywhere, and then you don't see anything else for the rest of the show.
And it looks like a Civil War battlefield. Just resting smoke.
It really does. And like that's the warning to people who are going to that. I have no other warning other than if you're spending all day out there, you want to take a look. If it gets up 90% humidity, there is a very good chance. And damn well that Donald Trump is going to have more fireworks for this 250th anniversary of America than ever before. So it's going to be a massive show. The first couple of fireworks could ruin the entire thing if it's just a little bit smoky. So that's the
there you have it.
Take it from the experts. Forget all the other stuff. Take it from the experts on that. Stephen Kent, I didn't even say your title. What are you up to nowadays? I had it and then I lost it and then you're the head of something. You're moving along.
I told you. Yeah, I'm the media director for the Consumer Choice Center. So we work a lot on this international trade and affordability agenda stuff, including housing and tariffs.
That's a hefty issue, man. That's like I knew you were a brain the whole time. I knew this whole time. I'm just a dumb guy that talks on the internet, and then once in a while people come on the show that are smart. Actually,
He's just a guy,
That's the smoke and mirrors is that I just bring on people smarter than me. That's the whole game. I had a Margaret Thatcher's former advisor before you, and now you, and it's like, how in the hell did I get to this part? How did I get to this point in my life? Thanks for being here, Stephen Kent. Again, media director for the Consumer Choice Center, and thank you for all your work over there. Go check out his article. I will pull it back up here. The Trump affordability policy that hurt more than it helps. It's a very, very good piece, very informative piece, and something we should be talking about. So thanks for being here, Stephen Kent, and hopefully I'll talk to you soon. Again, before I get out of here today, make sure, and I've got a show on Monday before we get out of here, make sure you're doing something to celebrate America on the 4th of July, even if it's in your neighborhood or your church or whatever you're doing. You don't want to miss out on this. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Again, I'm trying to figure out exactly where I'm going to be. I have a couple of places picked out where I would like to go and see for the 4th of July. But and actually, let's see what we got happening what's happening in the chat. Anybody here? I've been here we go. Oh, this is actually very good. A very good comment here. America's such a huge country. A lot of people don't realize how things that hurt them can at the same time be beneficial to those 1,000 miles away, and vice versa. Yes, absolutely. Shout out for Bull Run Winery there. And then going back to other comments here today from, here we go, Karen Tonget. No Democrat Party anymore, just the Communist and Islamic Party. It's kind of what's happening over in the UK. We're paying attention to all this stuff that's happening. From Nina earlier today, God bless America, wake up Americans. Yeah, absolutely. But I want to know if you have a couple of seconds here before we get out and you're watching the show right now, tell us in the comments where you're going to be spending the 4th of July. I'm going to be talking about this big next week where I have to make my final decision where I end up. I know I have to be in Washington, D.C. to start with, but like I said to Stephen just a couple of seconds ago, you get a little bit of humidity and the whole thing can go upside down when you're in Washington, D.C. But it is going to be beautiful. I would recommend that before the end of the year, maybe before the end of the summer, you take a personal trip to Washington, D.C. to see exactly what Donald Trump has done to improve that city. Because if, God forbid, a Democrat take over, God forbid, and D.C. will never be the same again. You'll never see it this pretty again. And you can see already when you see people out cheering for algae, when you see people out vandalizing the reflecting pool, that they don't want it to be beautiful. That there are crazy people in that city that do not want it to be beautiful and want it to be ugly and disgusting, just like they are on the inside and outside. So make sure you go see it. I have taken the long walk around. I did about a 5-mile walk one day, walking from the Capitol all the way down to the Thomas Jefferson Memorial, all the way through the Lincoln Memorial. I would recommend everyone go do that before the end of the year, even if you can't get down there for the 4th of July. The 4th of July hotels are like, I think $1,000 a night or something right now because everybody and their mom is going to be down there for the 4th of July. So that being said, make sure that you go and take a look at the work that we mentioned earlier from Niall Gardner and, of course, from Stephen Kent over at the Consumer Choice Center. I want to thank you guys for being here today. It's been a great time hanging out with you all, and I will see you next time. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you're following ForAmerica and Tim Runs His Mouth on all the social media platforms. And I will see you on Monday before we go on a little bit of a break to go celebrate the 4th of July around the country.